Hey everyone, Hurricane Liz here, back for another video, this time talking about audiobooks. Now, I know this is one of the hottest topics that I've been receiving questions about lately, so I decided to start demystifying the whole thing and breaking it down a little bit further. So in today's videos, we're going to start by talking about the 3 biggest mistakes that most brand new audiobook creators make when starting in this business. Hopefully this will help you gain a better understanding of what audiobooks are all about before I start to break it down any further. So I'm super fired up about this. I hope you're fired up. Let's go in and do this. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about problem number 1. Now, completely off the topic, unrelated problem is my cat is right now on my podium and I cannot get her off. So if I look off to the side, I'm looking at my computer, but I just can't look at it right here. So problem number 1, that's number 1. Let's talk about the real problems now. Number 1 biggest problem with most brand new audiobook creators is finding the right writers. So I'm going to talk about my experience finding the right writers and why I don't create any more audiobooks from outsourced writers, why I only create them in-house, and I'm going to talk about where to find them as well as other things. So let's go ahead and first start off by talking about where can you find a good writer. Now, this is potentially the single biggest problem in creating your very own book is finding the right writer. And let's talk about why this is. This is because before you even upload the audiobook to the ACX platform, which is where audiobooks are sold, this is Audible's back-end platform to where all audiobooks are sold for Amazon, you must first upload that book on the Kindle platform. So you need it written out. And in order to do that, most of us, let's face it, are not writers. I am not a writer by any means. And so we look to outsource this entire process. Now the question is, where do we find good help? I would never recommend you outsource this to the Philippines because, again, that is not their native language. It's not going to come out too great. So the 2 platforms that I've had the most success finding writers, other than by word of mouth and people that I just know and or doing it myself, is the first one is eWriter Solutions. Now, I have used them on a couple of instances and they turned out some pretty decent work. Just beware that the style of a writer you get might be different than what you envision. So be very clear on where you want the direction of this book to be, including the style. Like, do you really want it written out like a textbook style? Make sure you're very concise when you tell them how you want to write it. But eWriter Solution has always produced pretty darn good results. Now their prices have gradually gone up and the amount of time that it takes them to write the book add on about 2 to 3 weeks because I find that usually their estimates are a bit off. The second spot where you can find very good writers is Upwork. And again, Upwork is a lot of the same thing. You're going to have to weed throughout a lot of people until you find the right one, depending on your vision and the style that you want these ebooks to go with. Now, if you really don't care and you're really good at ranking and you just know that they'll sell as soon as you have them up and running, by all means, just go ahead and fire away and look for somebody. But those are the 2 most successful platforms that I found other than doing it myself and or when I just know someone that writes really well and I just approach them and see if they want to do it. Sometimes they will. There's sometimes a lot of writers out there that are really bored and just enjoy writing and researching. Okay, so the second biggest problem that I see with that problem itself is how do you know they're any good? So there's a couple solutions that I've come up with to figure out if they're any good or if I'm going to be able to work with them. The first is giving them a test assignment. Now this test assignment could be a short essay, it could be anything that is a lot less, but you want to get a gist of how they write. And in order to get this done, the best way is to pay them for this test assignment. And the reason for that is, sure, you're blowing a bit of your budget, but at least you'll know, are they any good? Now you might wonder, well, Liz, can I see their past work and figure out if they work for me? You can, but sometimes it's really hard to determine if they were the actual person that created that past work. So if you can get references and such, again, that's a whole other thing that you can open up. But the realistic thing is, are they in fact the person that wrote the test work? Are they in fact the person that wrote the samples that they give to you? That's questionable unless they have really good proof. But again, I usually like to give them a test assignment and I'm fine with paying for it because at the end of the day, I'm paying to find a good solid writer that I can work with long term. And then lastly, the biggest problem that I find is getting them to stick around and not only finish this project, but potentially work with you in the future. Now, obviously, there might be a lot of writers that you find that you don't want to work with in the future, but you definitely want them to complete this project. I've been on several projects where I've got a writer, I pay him upfront a certain amount and promise to pay him at the end, and midway through the book, he just up and quits. No reason given, just does a disappearing act, and pretty much I'm stuck. A lot of times stuck with a half-written book where now I've got to find another writer and their styles could be completely different. So this is completely annoying, and it does happen. It's very similar to how Filipinos sometimes just disappear and then never show up again. So in order to solve this problem, I usually like to incentivize, especially if they're doing a good job and I'm reading along and everything's looking really good, then I'll promise them an incentive at the end if they stick around. And this usually makes them stick around. But again, this is a common problem that happens when you first start out in this business. And that is why it is extremely valuable once you find the right writers and you pay them and you get them to stick around, because then you can have a really lucrative audiobook business. Okay, so now let's get to the second biggest problem when you first start out as an audiobook creator, and that is creating an in-depth outline for that potential writer to take and create your book with. Now, it's important to understand that this outline should be as in detail as you want it to be. It should have a great intro that you explain to them everything, including the style of the writing that you want it written from, and every single chapter should be outlined, and you can further subdivide each chapter. Now, it's pretty much up to you how in detail you want to be, but really, this is where the bulk of the research is done. This is where you put in all the time and energy to show them exactly how they should be researching, what they should be looking at, which details to pay close attention to when you give them that broad topic to write about, and most importantly, just outline every single chapter of the book, including the expectations that you think should be held for every single chapter. Now, the two biggest tips when it comes to this is, just like I said before, don't be afraid to be as in-depth as you want, because at the end of the day, it's going to be your book. So you're going to really want to emphasize what you think should be in it. And on the same token, you can also be as brief as you want and just allow them the creativity to go about it themselves. But I really am a huge fan of putting as much time and effort into it. And it could take you almost a day or two to put this outline together. And again, remember, a day or two of work in order to allow somebody else to take the reins and write the entire book, I think is well worth it. And then the second thing that you can also do is you can come up with the research for them. So what I mean by this is, a lot of times some of the books that we've written are about business topics. So let me give you an example. There was a time when we put out an Airbnb book, and at the time, Airbnb hadn't been too talked about when it came to books. So giving our writer a course to go over, and it was a mini course from Udemy on the overall scope of what an Airbnb business was, and having them start out with that and paying them to watch the course did a lot for them being able to think themselves and then do better research and then create a better book overall. So buying them a mini course in this step can often be very clutch in creating a very thorough book on a topic that the writer seems to know what they're talking about. Because if you don't do this part, a lot of times some of the books can seem like, I've read some Amazon FBA books and I'm like, this is absolutely horrible, yet they ranked and they sold well. But at the end of the day, you want to put together a book that can really help a person that is trying to learn about the topic, and we want it to seem like it's coming from a writer that knows the topic at hand. So a lot of times getting the writer integrated into this by giving them a mini course really helps and does a world of difference on the book, as well as the reviews that you will get going forward. All right, and the third biggest problem that I usually see happen to newbies when they get into this business is analysis paralysis. They just can't decide what topic to pick and allow the writer to go with. And part of the reason for this is that a lot of people feel like they have to be an expert on the topic that they're giving the writer, and that's not the case. And I've seen it in the comments time and time again where, Liz, I don't know anything. I'm a truck driver. I have no idea what to even start, what even kind of business to start. Nevertheless, figure out what kind of book to write. And like I said, the reality is you don't have to be an expert on any topic. All you've got to do is do the research and find a topic that's hot. You can become an expert and understand that niche in a couple days, just reading through and researching and putting the outline together, and then doing, like I said, a mini course. And then you hand over the reins to a professional writer to allow them to do the rest. So the biggest hint that I can give for you to go on with this part is to start off by going into the bestsellers. And there's a real quick tactic that I can show you that I use in order to do this. But I first start out by compiling a really gigantic list of a lot of broad topics. I take that list later on, and then I further subdivide it and niche it down and figure out what topic I'm going to give that writer. but I'm going to show you right now on my screen share exactly how to do that. All right, so the most important thing is to go again to Amazon bestsellers. And now that I'm in Amazon bestsellers, I'm going to just pick a category that I would like to create a book in. So I'm going to pick business and money. Again, I'll talk about in a future video how to pick these categories or these broad categories. And then I'm going to go further and I'm going to go into small business and entrepreneurship because I know it's all the rage and a lot of people want to have their own businesses. And now I'll even go further and I can either do home-based further, or I could just stick to this one, but I really like to niche it down. I can go into marketing, but we're just going to go into this and we're going to see some of the broad topics that are having a lot of success here. So here's buy, rehab, rent, refinance. So this is for somebody that's flipping a house. So that might be a topic that I write down, house flipping, and understand, and later on find out what keywords I would want to search for and stuff like that. So house flipping would be the first one on my list. And then I'd keep going on here. This one, 12 months to 1 million. I know Ryan Daniel Moran, so I think this is about Amazon FBA. So I'd write Amazon FBA down. And so now I have two. Bitcoin is all over the place lately, so I definitely would write Bitcoin. So that's three things that I have right now on my list that sort of interests me. And I know that people are interested in because they're in the hot new releases here. Again, hot new releases are some of the best places to find ideas for and understand what is selling and what is selling well. So these are about Amazon. I don't think we need anything like that. This is investing in real estate with no money. So that's another one, investing in real estate with no money. That's kind of the same as house flipping. Starting a business is a very broad one. There's a fifth one. And we could just keep going. Here's estimating rehab costs. So I can put that down. That is obviously a sub niche of the house flipping. And then I just keep going here as see what else I can find. Again, another real estate investing. So we know real estate investing is pretty hot. And I just keep going through that. Fulfillment, writing down One Click America. I'm not sure what that is about, but I would probably click into there and find out more. Managing real estate is another one. And I'm just going to keep going through all these. And if I don't find any more that I want, what I'll go and do is further sub-niche it over here and then go into maybe marketing this time. And now keep going down the line. So marketing is the absolute lowest sub-niche of this whole entire business and education series. So here's one from Russell Brunson, Why Startups Fail. But I'm not seeing, here's YouTube secrets. So that's another one that I would write down, YouTube. So now I've got like 7 or 8 and just going through this half-ass, right? I got 7 or 8 broad topics that I now need to look into further. Here's Airbnb, as I talked about before. And I'm going to show you guys in a future video how to do that. But again, any of those 7 or 8 topics are pretty damn good already because we know there's a demand for them. So don't get too stuck on, oh my God, which one do? I found like 7. I can't decide which one's best. There is no best first book to start with. There's just that first book to make. That way you kind of learn the process. You understand what's going on. After you do that first book and you put it out there, then things are going to start to make more sense, particularly because now you've got the process down. So now you've got the future keys to the kingdom and you know how to start from scratch to build your business upwards. So that's what I want you guys to start doing. And in the future video, I will cover how to niche that down and how to find the perfect book for you to find out. But I just wanted you to get through that hurdle and get started with the audiobook business, because if you are a great writer or if you do have a great writer, this is a great business for you. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Post your questions and comments below. I always personally answer. Peace out.